The Paralyzed Mafia boss spent New Year's Eve alone in the hotel he once owned, until a concierge made one decision that changed everything. Marcus Chun had discovered that exile has layers. 8 months ago, he'd commanded the Grand Meridian Hotel like an emperor surveying his palace, every concierge knowing his name, his habits, his reach. Now he occupied a corner table in the Crystal Lounge at 11:53 p.m. on New Year's Eve, watching San Francisco's elite raise crystal flutes while his body, numb from the chest down, sat motionless in the wheelchair that had become his prison. The chair's titanium frame, sleek and expensive, caught the warm glow of the chandelier overhead, a beautiful cage that mocked him with its precision engineering. Hey, before we dive into what happens next, if you're hooked on the story, do me a favor and subscribe. We drop new stories like this every week, and honestly, this one's just getting good. You won't want to miss it. Now, let's get into the story. Around him, the lounge pulsed with life. Clusters of socialites made promises they'd abandon by February. Couples kissed before the countdown, unable to wait. And Marcus sat invisible, his black silk shirt concealing most of the phoenix tattoo that stretched across his collarbone, the symbol of his former reign, now just ink on paralyzed flesh. His Macallan 25 had gone lukewarm an hour ago, but he couldn't force himself to leave. Returning to his penthouse meant confronting another solitary midnight in another hollow year. "Excuse me, sir. You've been sitting alone all evening." The voice floated down from above, gentle but deliberate, carrying the cadence of someone who chose her words carefully. Marcus looked up into the face of Amara Williams, the concierge who'd been quietly observing him for the past 3 months. 29, striking in a way that commanded attention without demanding it, natural hair styled in an elegant low bun, skin like warm amber, eyes that looked at him, truly at him, instead of through him or past the wheelchair. Chapter 1. The woman who saw him. "I'm fine," Marcus said, his voice carrying the clipped precision of someone who'd spent years giving orders that weren't questioned. "You can clear the glass if you'd like." Amara didn't move. She stood there, hands clasped professionally in front of her, but something in her posture suggested she had no intention of being dismissed. "With respect, sir, you don't look fine. You look like a man who's forgotten he has options." The audacity of it caught him off guard. In his former life, such presumption would have had consequences. Now he could only stare at her, searching for mockery or pity in her expression, and finding neither. "You don't know anything about me. I know you used to own this hotel," Amara said quietly, and the words hit like a physical blow. "I was working front desk 2 years ago, when you'd walk through the lobby. Everyone knew your name. You never had to ask for anything twice." She paused, letting that sink in. "I remember you, Mr. Chun. Not the wheelchair. You." Marcus felt something crack in his chest, some carefully constructed wall he'd built between himself and the world. That was someone else. Someone who could walk. That was someone who had power, Amara corrected, her voice gentle but firm. "There's a difference." She glanced at the ornate clock above the bar. "It's New Year's Eve. No one should be alone at midnight. Especially not someone who's already spent too many nights that way." "What are you suggesting?" The question came out more vulnerable than he intended. "I'm suggesting you let me help you see the fireworks from the rooftop terrace. Best view in the city." She tilted her head, and for the first time in 8 months, Marcus saw something in someone's eyes that wasn't pity or discomfort. It was recognition. "Unless you'd rather sit here and watch other people celebrate while you convince yourself you don't deserve to." The observation was too accurate, too sharp. Marcus wanted to refuse, to retreat behind the safety of isolation. But there was something about the way she looked at him, not down at him, not around him, but directly at him, that made him nod. "The terrace has stairs." "The terrace has a service elevator that's fully accessible," Amara said, and he caught the hint of a smile. "I checked this afternoon." The implication settled over him slowly. She'd planned this. Prepared for this. Wanted this. Why? "Because I've watched you come here every Friday for 3 months, sitting alone, looking like you're waiting for permission to exist again." She extended her hand, not to help him, but as an invitation. And because sometimes we all need someone to remind us that we're still here. The journey to the rooftop was quiet. Amara walked beside his wheelchair, not pushing, not hovering, simply present. The service elevator was indeed accessible, and Marcus found himself wondering how many details she'd considered, how much thought she'd put into this moment. When the doors opened onto the terrace, the night air hit him first, cool and sharp, carrying the scent of the bay. The rooftop was empty, reserved for VIP guests, and Amara had somehow secured access. She positioned them near the railing where the city sprawled below in glittering splendor, the bay dark and vast beyond it. 10 minutes until midnight, she said softly, and then did something unexpected. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder, warm and steady, an anchor he didn't know he needed. Marcus stared out at San Francisco, at the empire he'd once controlled from the shadows, and felt the weight of her touch through his shirt. It was the first time in 8 months that someone had touched him with simple human connection rather than clinical necessity or awkward obligation. When did you stop believing you mattered? Amara's question was barely audible over the distant sounds of the city. The question shattered something in Marcus. The day I woke up and couldn't feel my legs. Couldn't walk out of a room when I was done talking. Couldn't stand to face a threat or pull someone close or even. He stopped, jaw clenched. The day I became this. You didn't become anything, Amara said, her hand still steady on his shoulder. You're the same person who built an empire. The same person who commanded this hotel. The same person who, according to every story I've heard, took care of the people in his employ.
She paused.
You just forgot how to see yourself without the power. Below, the city began to count down. 10, 9, 8. Marcus could hear voices drifting up from other buildings, other lives, other people who hadn't lost everything. 7, 6, 5. Amara's hand squeezed his shoulder gently, grounding him in the moment. 4, 3, 2. Happy New Year, Marcus, she whispered as fireworks exploded over the bay, painting the sky in cascades of gold and silver and blue. Marcus watched the display, feeling tears he'd refused for 8 months finally break free. Thank you, he managed, voice rough. For seeing me. For remembering. That's what people do, Amara said simply. When they choose to really look. Chapter 2. The Careful Courtship. Marcus returned to the Grand Meridian the next afternoon, telling himself it was just for coffee, that it had nothing to do with wanting to see her again. He found Amara at the concierge desk, and when she looked up, her smile was immediate and genuine. Mr. Chun, welcome back. Marcus, he said. Just Marcus. Amara, she replied, and something shifted between them, a formality dissolving into possibility. It became a ritual. Every day at 3, Marcus would arrive at the hotel, and Amara would take her break. They'd sit in the lounge, his wheelchair positioned at the same corner table, and talk. She told him about her dreams of hotel management, about the courses she was taking online between shifts, about wanting to create spaces where people felt seen, valued, remembered. What's stopping you? Marcus asked one afternoon, genuinely curious. Amara's expression softened with something like resignation. My mother has Alzheimer's. Early onset. She's only 56. She stirred her tea slowly. The good care facilities cost more than I make in a year. So I work, I save, and I wait. The management track can wait. She can't. Marcus understood sacrifice, though his had always been calculated, strategic. Hers was pure love, and it humbled him. That's remarkable. What you're doing. It's just life, Amara said with a small shrug. You do what needs doing for the people who matter. He wanted to ask more, to understand her better, but she turned the questions back on him. Marcus became adept at deflection, offering carefully edited fragments. He'd been in import-export, he'd had an accident, he was figuring out what comes next. She never pushed, but he could see the questions in her eyes, the pieces she was slowly assembling. 3 weeks in, Marcus took the leap. Would you have dinner with me? Saturday night. Amara's smile could have lit the entire city. I'd love that. Marcus chose Le Bernardin, the kind of restaurant where reservations required connections he no longer had but money could still buy. He didn't think to ask about accessibility until his driver pulled up to the entrance and Marcus saw the wide stone steps leading to the door. The maitre d' appeared, all practiced sympathy. "Sir, we have a side entrance, if you'll just—" "The side entrance?" Marcus's voice was tight. "For accessibility, sir. It's quite discreet." Marcus felt Amara tense beside him, saw the staff's pitying glances, noticed other patrons turning to stare. The side entrance. Discreet. As if he were something to be hidden, smuggled in through the back like an embarrassment. "Let's go," he said to the driver, unable to look at Amara. In the car, silence stretched between them like broken glass. Finally, Marcus spoke, each word cutting. "This was a mistake. I can't take you to nice restaurants. I can't dance with you. Can't walk you to your door, or stand to kiss you goodnight. I can't give you what you deserve, Amara. I can't give you anything." "Stop." Amara's voice was sharp, fierce in a way he'd never heard. "Don't you dare decide what I deserve. That's not your choice to make." She turned to face him fully. "I'm not here for fancy restaurants or traditional romance or whatever fantasy you think I'm missing. I'm here for you. The man who listens when I talk about my dreams. Who remembers my mother's good days. Who looks at me like I'm the most interesting person in the room." Her eyes blazed. "I'm not here for what you can't do, Marcus. I'm here for who you are." The words broke something open in his chest, but fear still gripped him. "You don't understand what you're signing up for." "Then let me decide that." Amara pulled out her phone. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I'm planning our second date, and you're going to let me." The Japanese tea garden was perfect. Paved paths wound through carefully tended landscapes, accessible and beautiful. Amara had brought a picnic, homemade sandwiches, fruit, something she called my grandmother's lemon cake, that tasted like childhood memories Marcus had forgotten he had. They sat beneath cherry trees, petals drifting down like pink snow, and for the first time, Marcus talked. Really talked. About growing up poor in Chinatown, about his father's restaurant that failed, about building something from nothing. He edited the violence, the blood, but gave her the truth of his ambition, his drive, his need to matter. "I spent 20 years building power," he said quietly, "and 8 months learning I built it on sand." Amara reached over and took his hand, and the simple gesture felt monumental. "Maybe you built it on the wrong foundation. Maybe now you get to build something real." A breeze scattered more cherry blossoms around them, and Marcus found himself laughing, actually laughing, at Amara's story about a hotel guest who'd insisted his emotional support peacock needed a sweet upgrade. The sound felt foreign, rusty, but genuine. "I'd forgotten what this felt like," Marcus admitted. "Being happy." "Get used to it," Amara said, and then she leaned in slowly, giving him time to pull back, to refuse. But Marcus met her halfway, and when their lips touched among the falling petals, it felt like the first true thing he'd experienced in 8 months.
Gentle, tentative, transformative.
Not the romance of movies or fairy tales, but something better. Something real. When they broke apart, Amara's hand cupped his face.
"See?
You can give me exactly what I need.
This.
Just this." Chapter 3, Learning to be Human. The weeks that followed became a careful choreography of learning. Marcus took Amara to the Asian Art Museum, where wide corridors and elevator access made navigation seamless. She planned a private dinner at his penthouse, not because he couldn't go out, but because she wanted to cook for him. They found their rhythm, her learning when to offer help and when to step back, him learning that accepting assistance wasn't surrender, but partnership. One evening, as they sat on his terrace overlooking the city, Amara finally asked the question he'd been dreading. "What really happened to you, Marcus?" He'd prepared for this, rehearsed the sanitized version.
Car accident.
8 months ago on Highway 1. My vehicle went off the road. All technically true, just missing the crucial detail that 3 cars had forced him off that road, that bullets had shattered his windshield before the crash broke his spine. The doctors said I was lucky to survive. Amara was quiet for a moment, and he could see her processing, weighing his words against the things he wasn't saying. "Do you feel lucky?" "I'm starting to," he admitted, reaching for her hand. Learning physical intimacy was its own navigation. Marcus had spent months believing that part of his life was over, that desire had died with his mobility. But Amara approached their connection with patient curiosity, asking what he could feel, what brought pleasure, what they could discover together. There was awkwardness, yes, moments of frustration when his body wouldn't cooperate, when logistics overwhelmed intention. But there was also tenderness, laughter, and a connection that transcended the physical limitations he'd thought were insurmountable. The nightmares came without warning. Marcus woke gasping, his upper body jerking while his legs remained still, the memory of gunfire and crunching metal so vivid he could smell burning rubber. Amara was there instantly, her hand on his chest, her voice steady. "I'm here. You're safe. I'm right here." "I'm sorry," he managed, heart still racing. "I didn't mean to wake you. Stop apologizing for being human." She held him until his breathing steadied, asking no questions, demanding no explanations. Just present. When Marcus mentioned his physical therapy appointment, Amara asked if she could come. The request sparked immediate resistance. Therapy was humiliating, exposing every limitation, every failure of his body to obey his will. But he agreed, and watching her interact with Dr. Patel, asking intelligent questions about his progress, his prognosis, his daily exercises, Marcus felt the shame transform into something else. Acceptance, maybe. Or the beginning of it. "Your upper body strength has improved significantly," Dr. Patel noted. "Whatever you're doing differently these past few weeks, keep doing it." Amara caught his eye and smiled, and Marcus realized what had changed.
He had a reason now.
Not just to survive, but to be strong for someone other than himself. Meeting Amara's mother was both easier and harder than expected. Catherine Williams was having a good day, her eyes clear, her memories intact. She sat in the care facility's garden, studying Marcus with a sharp assessment of a woman who'd raised 4 children alone. "So you're the man my daughter talks about constantly," Catherine said, no preamble. "Mom," Amara protested, but she was smiling. "I hope so," Marcus replied, meeting Catherine's gaze directly. They talked for an hour, about the neighborhood where Catherine had raised her family, about her late husband who'd been a bus driver, about her pride in Amara's resilience. As they prepared to leave, Catherine caught Marcus's hand. "He looks at you like you're everything," she told Amara. Then, to Marcus, "You take care of my baby girl, you hear?" "I will," Marcus promised, meaning it with everything he had. In the car afterward, Amara was quiet, and Marcus could feel the weight of emotion radiating from her. "She won't remember this tomorrow," she finally said, voice thick. "Good days are getting rarer." Marcus took her hand, wishing he could offer more than presence, more than understanding. But sometimes that was all there was. That night, lying in his bed with Amara curled against his side in the way they'd learned worked best, she said it. Soft, simple, enormous. "I love you, Marcus." He felt the words hit his chest like a physical force. Wanted desperately to say them back, to give her that certainty. But terror rose in his throat. What if this was temporary? What if she realized what she'd signed up for and left? What if loving her made her a target for the ghosts still hunting him? He started, then stopped, the words catching. Amara pressed her palm over his heart. "When you're ready," she said gently. "I'm not going anywhere." "But Marcus? I need you to know. You don't have to be perfect or healed or certain. I love you exactly as you are right now in this moment. Broken parts and all." Marcus pulled her closer, feeling tears burn behind his eyes. He was falling, had already fallen, and the terror of it was matched only by the wonder. For the first time in 8 months, he believed that maybe, just maybe, he deserved this. Deserved her. Deserved happiness despite everything he'd been and everything he'd done. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "For seeing me. For staying." "Always," Amara promised, and Marcus let himself believe her. Chapter 4. Ghosts don't stay buried. Wei appeared at the Grand Meridian on a Tuesday afternoon, and Marcus knew immediately that his carefully reconstructed world was about to collapse. His former lieutenant stood near the concierge desk, scanning the lobby with the hypervigilance of a man who'd survived 2 decades in the underworld. When their eyes met, Wei's expression told Marcus everything he needed to know. The past had found him. "We need to talk," Wei said in Mandarin, sliding into the seat across from Marcus. Privately. They spoke in Marcus's car, parked in the hotel's underground garage where concrete walls muffled secrets. Wei didn't waste time. "They know you're alive. The Dragon Syndicate. They've been watching you for weeks." Marcus felt ice flood his veins. "That's impossible."
Sun Yitai thinks I'm dead.
"Everyone thinks I'm dead. Sun's nephew saw you at that restaurant. The one with the stairs." Wei's jaw tightened. He reported back. "They've been conducting surveillance ever since, trying to figure out if you're a threat or just a broken relic." He paused, and Marcus saw genuine fear in his old friend's eyes. "They've seen you with the girl. The concierge." Amara. Marcus's hands gripped the wheelchair's armrests. "She has nothing to do with this. She's innocent. She has everything to do with it now." Wei leaned forward, urgent. "She's your weakness, Marcus. Your leverage. Sun won't move against you directly. You're not worth the risk. But her? She's how they hurt you, without consequences." The full truth spilled out then, 8 months of carefully constructed lies crumbling. Marcus had ruled San Francisco's Chinese-American underworld for 15 years. Territory wars, protection rackets, strategic violence that kept the peace through fear. The Dragon Syndicate had wanted his operations, his connections, his power. The ambush on Highway 1 wasn't random. It was execution, meant to eliminate him and seize his empire. "They succeeded," Marcus said bitterly. "I lost everything. The organization fractured. I'm nobody now." "You're somebody to her," Wei countered. "And that makes you dangerous again. Not because of what you can do, but because of what they can take from you." He pulled out his phone, showing surveillance photos, Marcus and Amara at the tea garden, entering his building, her hand in his. "You need to tell her the truth. All of it. And then you need to let me protect you both." Marcus felt nausea rise in his throat. "If I tell her, I lose her anyway. If you don't tell her and something happens to her, you lose everything." That night, Marcus asked Amara to come to his penthouse. She arrived with Thai takeout and a smile that made his heart ache with what he was about to destroy. They sat in his living room, the city lights glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, and Marcus began to speak. He told her everything. Not the sanitized version, but the raw truth. The violence, the territory wars, the men who'd followed his orders into bloodshed. The empire he'd built on fear and maintained through calculated cruelty. The ambush that was attempted murder, not accident. The enemies who wanted him dead and now saw her as the path to finishing what they'd started. "Did you kill people?" Amara's voice was small, careful. Marcus met her eyes, refusing to hide behind euphemism or excuse. "Yes." The silence that followed felt infinite. Amara stood, walking to the windows, arms wrapped around herself. Marcus watched her process, saw the war playing out in her posture. The woman who'd fallen in love with him versus the woman confronting what he'd been. "I need time," she finally said. "I need to think." "I understand." Marcus's voice was hollow. He'd prepared for this, built walls in anticipation of the inevitable abandonment. "I'll have Wei arrange protection for you while you—" "Stop." Amara turned, and her eyes were fierce through the tears. "I said I need time to think, not that I'm leaving." She crossed back to him, kneeling so they were eye level. "You lied to me, Marcus. About who you were. What you did. That's what I'm struggling with. Not the wheelchair, not the danger, but the fact that you didn't trust me with the truth." "I was afraid," Marcus admitted, the words scraping out. "Afraid you'd see me as the monster I was." "Were," Amara repeated, catching the tense. Past tense. "Is that who you are now?"
"No."
Marcus's certainty surprised even himself. "That man died on Highway 1. I don't know who I'm becoming, but it's not him. Amara was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Did you hurt innocent people? Women, children?
No.
Never. I had rules, lines I wouldn't cross. It wasn't absolution, but it was truth. Okay. Amara took a shaky breath. Here's what's going to happen. I'm not leaving you. But we do this my way. No more violence, no returning to that life, even to protect me. We find another solution. Her hands cupped his face. And Marcus? No more lies. Ever. I can handle the truth. I can't handle not knowing who you really are. Relief and terror warred in his chest. Wei says I need to move you somewhere secure. My building has better security than your apartment. Then I'll pack a bag. Amara's voice steadied. But we face this together. You don't get to push me away to protect me. That's not how this works. Marcus pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, marveling at her courage. She'd learned the worst of him, and chosen to stay. Not because she didn't understand the danger, but because she'd weighed the cost and decided he was worth it. I love you, Marcus said, the words finally breaking free. I'm terrified and I love you, and I don't deserve you, but I love you. Amara kissed him, fierce and claiming. You don't get to decide what you deserve. I already did. Chapter 5, Living in the Crosshairs. Living under siege changed everything. Wei's security team became their shadows. 2 men stationed outside Marcus's penthouse, another following Amara to work, cameras monitoring every entrance. The precautions were necessary, Marcus knew, but watching Amara's world shrink felt like watching her drown in slow motion. I can't even go to the grocery store without an armed escort, she said 2 weeks in, frustration bleeding through her careful control. I feel like a prisoner, Marcus. You're alive, he countered, but the guilt was corrosive. This was his past, his violence, his enemies. She was paying the price for loving him. Wei's briefings painted an increasingly grim picture. The Dragon Syndicate wasn't just watching, they were probing, testing security, looking for weaknesses. Sun Yitai was patient, methodical, the kind of enemy who waited for the perfect moment to strike. He's playing a long game, Wei explained during one session, spreading surveillance photos across Marcus's dining table. Making you paranoid, making her miserable. He wants you to make a mistake. The mistake nearly happened on a Thursday. Amara was leaving the hotel after her shift when a black sedan jumped the curb, accelerating directly toward her. Wei's team reacted instantly, one guard physically tackling Amara while the other opened fire at the vehicle's tires. The car swerved, missing her by inches, speeding away before police could respond. Marcus got the call while in physical therapy. By the time Wei's driver brought him to the penthouse, Amara was there, shaken but unharmed, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm evening. When she saw him, she broke, tears finally coming. I could have died, she whispered against his shoulder. I was just walking to my car, and I could have died. Marcus held her, feeling rage and helplessness war in his chest. I can't even physically protect you, he said, the words raw. I can't stand between you and a threat. I can't fight. I can't. Stop. Amara pulled back, her eyes red but fierce. I don't need you to physically fight. I need you to be smart. To find a solution that doesn't involve more violence, more blood. Her hands framed his face. You're brilliant, Marcus. You built an empire through strategy. Use that now. But strategy felt inadequate against enemies who communicated through attempted murder. Their relationship strained under the pressure. Arguments about whether Amara should quit her job, whether she should stay with her mother less frequently, whether they were being careful enough or too careful. Every disagreement ended with both of them apologizing, clinging to each other, terrified of losing what they'd found. One evening, after a particularly brutal physical therapy session, Marcus sat in his bathroom, muscles screaming, unable to reach his own back to apply the prescribed cream. He'd sent Amara away, not wanting her to see him this vulnerable, this dependent. She returned anyway, knocking gently before entering. Let me help, she said simply, and when he tried to protest, she cut him off. We're past this, Marcus. Let me help. Her hands were gentle, methodical, working the cream into his strained muscles. The intimacy of it, being cared for, being seen in his weakness, broke something open in him. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for all of this, for bringing danger into your life. You also brought love into my life, Amara countered. They're a package deal. I accept both. The temptation to return to violence whispered constantly in Marcus's mind. He knew how to handle threats like Sun Yitai. One call to Wei, one unleashed attack, and the problem could be solved the old way. Blood for blood, fear for fear. It would be easy, efficient, final. Wei made the offer explicit one night, pulling Marcus aside. Let me handle this. I still have the connections, the resources. One operation and Sun is gone. You never have to get your hands dirty. Marcus stared at his oldest friend, at the man who'd pulled him from the wreckage 8 months ago, who'd stood by him through everything.
No.
Marcus. That's not who I am anymore. Marcus's voice was firm, final. That's not who I want to be for her. If I return to violence, even indirectly, I lose myself. And if I lose myself, I lose her anyway. Wei studied him for a long moment. Then, what's the play? Negotiation. Sacrifice. Marcus had been turning it over in his mind for days, the strategy forming. Sun doesn't care about me. He cares about power, territory, resources. I still have assets, connections, information. Things he wants more than my death. You'd give him everything? For her? Marcus's answer was immediate. Everything. The businesses, the offshore accounts, the remaining territory rights. All of it. I'll stir myself to nothing if it means she's safe. Wei shook his head slowly, something like admiration crossing his features. The old Marcus would have gone to war, would have burned the city down rather than surrender. The old Marcus died in that crash, Marcus said quietly. I'm building something different now. Something better. And I won't destroy it to prove I'm still dangerous. That night, lying beside Amara in the darkness, Marcus outlined his plan. She listened without interrupting, her hand finding his beneath the covers. You'd give up everything? She asked when he finished. I already have everything, Marcus said, pulling her closer. Right here. The rest is just money and power. It doesn't matter anymore. Amara was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. You're the bravest person I've ever met. Not because you built an empire, but because you're willing to dismantle it. Marcus kissed her forehead, feeling certain for the first time in weeks. The path forward was clear, even if it meant walking away from everything his old self had valued. Love required courage, but it was a different kind of courage than violence. Harder, maybe. More costly. But infinitely more worthwhile. Call Sun's people, Marcus told Wei the next morning. Set up a meeting. It's time to end this. Chapter 6, The Summit. The warehouse sat in the industrial district south of Market, abandoned except for the ghosts of commerce past and the armed men who filled it now. Wei had chosen neutral ground, but neutrality was relative when both sides came prepared for war. Marcus counted at least 8 of Sun's men positioned strategically throughout the space, weapons visible, a show of force designed to intimidate. Sun Yitai waited at the center, flanked by his lieutenants, a man in his 50s who'd built his empire on ruthlessness and patience. When he saw Marcus wheel through the entrance, his lip curled with undisguised contempt. The great Marcus Chen. Sun's Mandarin dripped with mockery. Look at you now. Pathetic. The youngest boss in the city's history, reduced to rolling instead of walking. Marcus met his gaze steadily, refusing to take the bait. I didn't come to fight. I came to negotiate. Sun laughed, the sound echoing off concrete walls. Negotiate? You have nothing to negotiate with. You're already dead. You just haven't accepted it yet. He gestured at Marcus's wheelchair with disgust. Your organization is gone. Your power is gone. You're nothing. Then this should be easy, Marcus said calmly. He nodded to Wei, who produced a leather portfolio, placing it on the makeshift table between them. I'm offering complete surrender. Everything I have left, transferred to you. No conditions except one. Sun's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but he gestured for one of his men to bring him the documents. Marcus watched him scan the inventory, saw the moment genuine interest sparked beneath the contempt. 3 legitimate businesses valued at over 40 million. Offshore accounts in the Caymans holding another 15. Property deeds in San Francisco, Oakland, and Sacramento. Information on remaining connections, routes, contacts that had taken Marcus 15 years to cultivate. This is everything, Sun said slowly, looking up. Your father's legacy. Your life's work. His voice hardened. Why would you give me everything? Marcus took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment, the final death of his old self. Because none of it matters anymore. She matters. The woman you've been threatening, the one your people tried to kill. She's all that matters, and I will give you every asset, every connection, every scrap of power I have left if you guarantee her safety. Sun studied him, searching for deception, for the angle. The Marcus Chun I knew would have gone to war, would have burned down half the city before surrendering an ounce of territory. That man died on Highway 1, Marcus said quietly. I'm what's left, and all I want is peace. Sun's expression shifted to something crueler. Prove it. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a deadly whisper.
Beg.
Beg me to spare her life. Get down on your knees and beg like the broken man you are. The demand hung in the air like a blade. Marcus felt Wei tense beside him, heard the sharp intake of breath from his remaining men. In his former life, such an insult would have meant immediate violence. Pride had been everything, respect earned through fear, status maintained through strength. To kneel, even figuratively, was to accept complete humiliation. Marcus looked at Sun, then at the documents that represented everything his father had died building, everything Marcus had sacrificed for. And he thought of Amara, her laugh, her fierce love, the way she'd chosen him despite everything. He thought of Sunday mornings and cherry blossoms and the simple joy of being truly seen. The choice was no choice at all. Please. Marcus's voice was steady, clear. I'm begging you. She's innocent. She has nothing to do with our world, our wars. Leave her alone. Take everything I have. Destroy me financially. Erase every trace of my empire. Just let her live safely. Please. The warehouse went silent. Wei stared at him, shock and something like grief on his face. Sun's lieutenants exchanged glances, uncertain how to process this complete surrender. Marcus held Sun's gaze, letting him see the sincerity, the absolute willingness to sacrifice everything for one woman's safety. Sun sat back slowly, studying Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. You've really changed, he said, and the mockery was gone, replaced by something almost like respect. You're not the man I tried to kill 8 months ago. No, Marcus agreed. I'm not. Sun picked up a pen, reading through the documents again more carefully. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, he signed, then pushed the papers to his lawyer for witnessing. Everything here is now mine. Your businesses, your accounts, your connections. And in return, I give you my word, the woman is untouchable. Anyone who moves against her answers to me personally. Binding. Marcus pressed. Binding. Sun gestured to his men. Witnessed by both sides. Break this truce, and I lose face with everyone here. My word is my bond, Chun. You know that. The documents were signed, witnessed, sealed. Marcus felt each signature like a death, watching 15 years of work transfer to his enemy. But beneath the loss, he felt something unexpected. Liberation. Sun stood, preparing to leave, then paused. You've lost everything, Chun. Your empire, your father's legacy, your power. Was she worth it? Marcus met his eyes without hesitation. I've gained everything. You just can't see it. Sun shook his head slowly, something unreadable in his expression. Maybe I can't. Maybe that's why you're free, and I'm still fighting. He turned away, then stopped once more. For what it's worth, you made the right choice. The old Marcus would have died before surrendering. This one might actually live. When they were gone, Wei approached Marcus quietly. "Boss." "Not your boss anymore," Marcus interrupted gently. "Not anyone's boss. Just a man trying to deserve the woman who loves him." Wei's jaw tightened, emotions warring across his face. Then he nodded, respect clear in his eyes. "Then you succeeded. Because what you just did, that took more courage than any battle we ever fought." Marcus wheeled toward the exit, feeling lighter despite having lost everything. He'd stripped himself bare, humbled himself before his enemy, given away his father's legacy. And he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because Amara was safe. And that made him richer than he'd ever been.
#shop27 SRL bara.
Marcus returned to the penthouse at dusk, the city lights beginning to sparkle like false promises. Even this building wouldn't be his much longer. The property deed had been in the portfolio, transferred along with everything else. He had perhaps a month before he'd need to find somewhere new, somewhere modest, somewhere that matched what he'd become. Amara was waiting, pacing the living room with nervous energy. When she saw him, she rushed over, searching his face. "Are you okay?" Wei called, but he didn't tell me. "It's done," Marcus said quietly. "She's safe. You're safe." Sun gave his word in front of witnesses. The threat is over. Relief flooded her features, then concern as she really looked at him. "Marcus? What did you give him?" "Everything." The word came out flat, exhausted. "The businesses, the accounts, the properties. All of it. I have my personal possessions, about 40,000 in my checking account, and this place for another few weeks." He couldn't meet her eyes. "I have nothing to offer you now. No security, no wealth, no power. Just a paralyzed ex-criminal with a violent past and an uncertain future." Amara knelt beside his wheelchair, taking his hands in hers. "You never had to offer me anything but yourself." Something broke in Marcus then, 8 months of carefully controlled emotion finally rupturing. "I killed people, Amara. Not in self-defense, not accidentally. I gave orders that ended lives. I hurt families, destroyed businesses that wouldn't comply, built an empire on fear and violence." His voice cracked. "I don't deserve redemption. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve this second chance at being human." "Stop." Amara's voice was fierce, pulling his face up to look at her. "Redemption isn't about deserving. It's about choosing differently. You can't change what you did, but you chose to become someone different. You chose love over violence. You chose humility over pride. You chose me over everything you'd built." Tears streamed down her face. "That's redemption, Marcus. Not erasing the past, but refusing to let it define your future." Marcus pulled her close, burying his face in her shoulder, feeling tears he'd suppressed for years finally break free. She held him through it, this proud man reduced to sobbing in his wheelchair, stripped of everything except the raw truth of who he was. And she didn't flinch, didn't pull away, held him tighter. "I love you," Marcus said when he could speak again. "Not because you stayed, not because you accepted this, but because you see all of me, the broken parts, the violent past, the uncertain present, and you choose me anyway. I love you, Amara. With everything I am, everything I have left, I love you." "I love you too," she whispered. "All of you. Past, present, future." They sat like that as darkness fell, the city spreading below them, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not healing. He wasn't sure he'd ever fully heal from what he'd been. But transformation. The death of oneself and the birth of another. "Marry me," Marcus said suddenly, the words urgent, essential. "I don't have a ring. I can't offer you financial security or grand gestures or anything except this. Marry me because I can't imagine existing without you. Because you saved me from myself. Because I want to spend whatever time I have left becoming the man you deserve." Amara pulled back, tears streaming, but her smile was radiant.
"Yes. God, yes."
"I'll marry you, Marcus-chan. Not for what you can give me, but for who you are. For who we are together." They kissed, desperate and tender, sealing a promise made from nothing but love and hope. When they broke apart, Amara was laughing through her tears. "We're going to be so poor." "I'll find work," Marcus said, feeling strange relief in the practical concerns. "Legitimate work. Consulting, maybe. Accessibility advocacy. I have experience now." He managed a wry smile. "And you'll be running a hotel someday. Between us, we'll manage." "We'll more than manage," Amara promised. "We'll build something real." Wei came by the next evening with papers for Marcus to sign, final transfers, legal documents officially severing him from his criminal past. But he also brought news. "I'm out," Wei said simply. "Watching you walk away from everything, it made me realize I've been waiting for permission to do the same." He handed Marcus a business card. "Starting a legitimate security consulting firm. If you need anything, if she needs anything, you call." Marcus took the card, feeling emotion tighten his throat. "Thank you. For everything.
For pulling me out of that wreck.
For staying loyal. For understanding why I had to do this." Wei gripped his shoulder. "You didn't just save her life, boss. You saved mine too. Showed me there's another way." He glanced at Amara. "Take care of him. He's stronger than he knows." "I know," Amara said, her hand finding Marcus's. "I've always known." After Wei left, Marcus and Amara sat planning their future. A modest apartment in the Sunset District. Marcus using his strategic mind for legitimate consulting. Amara continuing toward management, now without the weight of secrecy. Simple things, grocery shopping, movie nights, Sunday dinners with her mother. The ordinary magic of a life built on love instead of power. "Are you scared?" Amara asked as they prepared for bed. Marcus considered the question honestly. Terrified. But not of being poor or powerless. "I'm scared of failing you. Of not being enough without the Empire." Amara cupped his face, her gaze steady. "You were never enough because of the Empire. You're enough because you're you. Because you chose to change. Because you love me more than you love power." She kissed him softly. "That's all I've ever needed." Marcus held her close, feeling the truth of it settle in his bones. He'd lost everything and gained the only thing that mattered. And tomorrow, they'd start building something new from the ashes of his old life. Something real, something honest, something worth keeping. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "For seeing me. For saving me. For loving me." "Always," Amara promised. "Always." Chapter 8, The Beginning. The small church in the Mission District had seen countless weddings, but Marcus suspected few grooms had arrived quite like he did, wheeling himself down the side aisle to take his position at the altar. 6 months had passed since he'd stripped himself bare, and the man waiting now bore little resemblance to the crime lord who'd once commanded fear with a glance. Amara's family filled the modest pews, her 3 siblings with their families, cousins Marcus was still learning to name, friends from the hotel who'd become their community. And in the front row, Catherine Williams sat with unusual clarity, her eyes bright and present, one of those precious good days that felt like a gift. Wei stood beside Marcus as best man, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit but present nonetheless. His security consulting firm was thriving, built on the skills he'd learned in darker times but applied to protecting instead of threatening. "You ready?" he asked in Mandarin. Marcus adjusted his tie, feeling the weight of the moment. "I've been ready since New Year's Eve." The music began, and everyone rose. Marcus remained seated, but for the first time since the accident, he felt no shame in it. This was simply how he existed in the world now, and Amara had taught him that how he moved mattered less than who he chose to be. Then she appeared at the back of the church, and Marcus forgot to breathe. Amara wore a simple cream dress that flowed as she walked, her natural hair crowned with small white flowers, her smile radiant enough to light the dim sanctuary. She wasn't walking toward wealth or status or the life Marcus used to offer. She was walking toward him, just him, and the choice was visible in every step. Her brother escorted her down the aisle, but when they reached the altar, Amara immediately knelt beside Marcus's wheelchair, so they were eye level. Equal. Partners. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present, and Marcus heard someone in the pew sniffling. The ceremony was brief, bilingual, English and Mandarin intertwined like their lives would be. But it was the vows that Marcus had agonized over, desperate to capture what Amara meant to him. "I was alone on New Year's Eve," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. "Convinced my life had ended on a highway 8 months earlier. And you saw a man where everyone else saw a wheelchair. You saw possibility where I saw endings. You saw someone worth saving when I'd given up on myself." He reached for her hands, holding them like anchors. "You didn't fall in love with my power or my money. You fell in love with me at my lowest, which means you fell in love with the truth of who I am. I promise to spend every day earning that love, becoming worthy of it, and choosing you over everything else. Always." Amara's tears flowed freely as she spoke her vows. "Marcus, you taught me that strength isn't about what you can do, but who you choose to be. You showed me that courage means being vulnerable, that power means knowing when to surrender, that love is choosing someone even when, especially when it costs you everything." Her voice cracked with emotion. "You gave up an empire for me. I give you my heart, my life, my future. Not because you're perfect, but because you're perfect for me. I love you, and I choose you, today and every day after." When the officiant pronounced them married, their kiss was tender, unhurried, a promise sealed in front of witnesses who'd seen them fight for this love. The small church erupted in applause, joy filling the space. The reception was held in the church's community hall, decorated with simple elegance that Amara and her sisters had created on a modest budget. The food was potluck, Amara's family's soul food alongside dishes from Marcus's former neighborhood, a fusion of cultures and communities celebrating together. Catherine Williams gave the toast, and her lucidity was a blessing everyone recognized as temporary. "Real love," she said, voice clear and strong, "isn't about the good days. It's about choosing someone every day, especially the hard days. Especially when it costs you something. My daughter and her husband, they know that already. They've lived it. And that's why this marriage will last." The dance was adapted. Marcus couldn't stand and sway, but Amara sat on his lap as he wheeled them slowly around the floor, her arms around his neck, their foreheads touching. Someone had chosen, At Last by Etta James, and the lyrics felt prophetic. At last, his life had truly begun. At last, he understood what mattered. "I lost my empire to gain a kingdom I didn't know existed," Marcus whispered as they moved together. Amara pulled back to look at him, smiling through fresh tears. "What kingdom?"
This.
Marcus gestured to the room, her family laughing, Wade dancing awkwardly with one of her cousins, the community that had accepted them despite everything.
You. Us.
A life built on love instead of fear. I was so obsessed with building power that I never realized I was building a prison. He cupped her face. "You set me free." "We set each other free," Amara corrected, kissing him softly. Later, in a quiet moment away from the celebration, Marcus sat at a window overlooking the city. Amara found him there, still in her wedding dress, and settled beside him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching San Francisco's lights begin to twinkle in the gathering dusk. "I'm thinking about the man I was a year ago, sitting alone on New Year's Eve, waiting to die. And I'm thinking about the man I am now, married to the woman I love, building a legitimate life, finally becoming someone I can respect." He turned to her. "I'm thinking that losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought me to you." Amara took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "New beginnings." "New beginnings," Marcus echoed, and for the first time in his life, he meant it without reservation. The past was behind him. The future was uncertain. But the present, this moment, this woman, this love was everything. And it was more than enough. Chapter 9, Redemption's Reward. 1 year after the wedding, Marcus Chin woke to sunlight streaming through the windows of their modest Sunset District apartment and the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. The space was small, nothing like the penthouse he'd once owned, but it was filled with photographs, Amara's grandmother's quilts, and the accumulation of a life built on love rather than fear. Morning, Amara called from the kitchen, and Marcus wheeled himself out to find her already dressed in her assistant manager uniform, the promotion she'd earned 6 months ago evident in her confident posture. She poured his coffee exactly how he liked it, kissed his forehead, and they shared 20 minutes of ordinary magic before the day demanded their attention. Marcus's consulting work had grown beyond his expectations. Companies wanted his expertise on accessibility, not just the legal requirements, but the lived experience of navigating a world designed for walking. He'd become an advocate, using his strategic mind to dismantle barriers instead of people. The irony wasn't lost on him, but the satisfaction was real. "We're still on for the tea garden this afternoon?" Amara asked, checking her phone. "Wouldn't miss it," Marcus assured her. It had become their ritual. Once a month, they'd return to the place where everything had changed, where Marcus had first laughed again, first kissed her among falling cherry blossoms. The Japanese tea garden was quieter on weekdays, and they found their usual spot near the koi pond. Marcus watched the fish move beneath the surface, their scales catching sunlight, and felt the weight of how far he'd traveled. "I thought losing my legs was the end of my life," he said quietly, more to himself than Amara. But it was just the end of a lie I'd been living. Amara took his hand, understanding in her silence. Marcus's mind drifted through memories, images of his former self barking orders in Mandarin, counting cash in backrooms, the weight of a gun he'd carried for years. The fear in people's eyes when they recognized him. The emptiness of respect built on violence. He'd been powerful, yes. Wealthy, feared, commanding. And utterly, devastatingly alone. He thought of the man he'd become instead, consulting with architects about ramp angles, speaking at accessibility conferences, having genuine friendships with people who knew his past and chose him anyway. The deep satisfaction of helping rather than hurting. The profound peace of building something that mattered. True power was never about domination, Marcus said, looking at Amara. It was always about connection. I just couldn't see it until I lost everything else. Amara was quiet for a long moment, an unusual nervousness in her expression. Speaking of connection, she began, then stopped, taking a breath. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." His heart rate spiked, reading anxiety in her posture. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. It's just complicated. And unexpected." She pulled something from her purse, placing it in his hands. A pregnancy test, unmistakably positive. Marcus stared at it, his mind struggling to process. "But the doctor said, with my injury." "They said unlikely, not impossible," Amara interrupted gently. "And apparently we beat the odds." Her voice wavered. "I know we didn't plan this. I know it's going to be hard, navigating pregnancy and parenting with your mobility challenges. I know our apartment is barely big enough for 2 people, let alone 3. But Marcus," her eyes filled with tears, "I want this. If you want this." Marcus looked at the test, then at his wife, then back at the test. A child. His child. Their child. Something he'd never even allowed himself to imagine. Tears blurred his vision as a year's worth of gratitude crashed over him. Gratitude for surviving the crash, for Amara's compassion on New Year's Eve, for the courage to change, for this impossible second chance at life. "Want this?" His voice broke completely. "Amara, you've given me everything. A reason to live, to change, to believe I could be more than my worst choices. And now," he pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "Now you're giving me a future I never dreamed possible. Yes. God, yes, I want this." They held each other as cherry blossoms drifted around them, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and built a life in the light. New Year's Eve found them back at the Grand Meridian Hotel, guests now in the Crystal Lounge where everything had begun. The management had invited them specially, knowing their story, celebrating the anniversary of the night that changed 2 lives. Marcus sat in the same corner where he'd waited alone a year ago, but everything was different. Amara was beside him, her hand resting on the small swell of her belly that was just beginning to show. Wei had joined them, bringing his girlfriend, the accountant who'd helped him build his legitimate business. Around them swirled celebration, but Marcus no longer felt separate from it. He was part of the joy now, woven into the fabric of human connection. As midnight approached, Amara leaned close. "What are you thinking?" Marcus looked at her. This woman who'd seen past his wheelchair to the man trapped inside, who'd chosen him at his lowest, who'd taught him that vulnerability with strength and love was the only power worth having. "I'm thinking about a paralyzed mafia boss who spent New Year's Eve alone, convinced his life was over." And Amara prompted, smiling. And I'm thinking he was right. That life was over. But a new one was beginning, if he could just be brave enough to accept it. Marcus pulled her close as the countdown started. "Thank you for being brave enough for both of us." 10, 9, 8, the crowd counted down together. 7, 6, 5. Marcus thought of everything he'd lost and everything he'd gained. 4, 3, 2. Amara's eyes met his, holding promises of tomorrows he'd never expected. 1. They kissed as fireworks exploded over San Francisco, painting the sky in cascades of gold and hope. And Marcus understood, finally and completely, that true power had never been about domination or fear or control. True power was being seen, truly seen, and choosing to be vulnerable enough to love and be loved in return. The paralyzed mafia boss had learned that being seen, truly seen and loved, was the only power that ever mattered. And in learning it, he'd found redemption, purpose, and a life worth living. Enjoyed this story?
Subscribe.
We've got dozens more about impossible choices, moral complexity, and the messy reality of being human. Don't miss the next one. Click below, and I'll see you soon.